Hello, everybody. I'm so excited that you're here. I want to talk today specifically about our stress hormones and cortisol and what those specific patterns tend to look like as we age, as we move through perimenopause and menopause. That way, you can avoid some of the pitfalls of hormone replacement therapy when it's not necessarily the number one thing that you should go to. So, first of all, cortisol is produced primarily by our adrenal glands, which those adrenal glands sit right on top of your kidneys, and they are responsible for not only producing the cortisol that we need to regulate our blood sugar, make sure that we have the energy to get through the day, but it's also the adrenal glands are responsible for taking over the production of certain hormones, specifically progesterone during the first half of your cycle if you are a cycling woman, but it's also responsible for taking over the production of DHEA, estrogen, as we move through perimenopause and menopause. So if you are a female and you have tried birth control, you have tried adjusting your diet, you have, tried to limit your stress as much as possible, but you're still not seeing that full picture of healing with your hormones, there's a really good chance that we just haven't dug deep enough to what's going on with your cortisol patterns that might be keeping you stuck. So I want to talk about a couple of those specific patterns today, and maybe this will help you move forward in knowing exactly what to focus on. But one of the first patterns that we see specifically is what I would call the low progesterone pattern. And this is where we see mood swings, irritability, and fatigue leading up to your cycle. And for some women, they also experience some bloating, some spotting, or even spotting around ovulation. So that is a very good indicator that the body is not making it's not making enough progesterone at the time of the month that we actually need it to. And so progesterone is not the main issue in this scenario, though. The main issue, we have to go back to how and why progesterone is made. So when we look, we go back upstream to the problem, and that problem really does start in the digestive tract, where our beneficial bacteria are responsible for communicating with the brain, to make the right hormones at the right time of the month, and then they actually trigger specific responses to the ovaries to make progesterone at the right time of the month. So this is where I feel a lot of practitioners actually get it wrong. And that is, I know that's a bold statement, but that is because they start with like recommending a progesterone supplement or, birth control or progesterone creams, but they haven't really done any work on looking at what's going on in the physiology in the body that may be contributing to that symptom. So for me, what we always look at is the root causes. We immediately focus on healing that gut-brain connection so that you do have that really good beneficial bacteria that's then communicating with the brain, that can then communicate with the ovaries to produce progesterone at the right time of the month. But there's also another factor that we have to look at in here. When our gut becomes disrupted, that alone, the inflammation alone, not even considering the stress aspect of this, but just inflammation, will raise cortisol levels and create a dysfunctional cortisol pattern throughout the day. And what that can look like is no matter how much you try, you just don't feel rested. You're getting 8 hours of sleep, but you're waking up feeling tired. You maybe, need 1 to 2 cups of coffee to get through the morning, and then your cortisol levels drop off in the afternoon, leaving you feeling like you need to take a nap. But then when you go to lay your head down on the pillow, you can't go to sleep. So that is a dysfunctional cortisol pattern. And there are kind of two sides to this, or like what came first, the chicken or the egg, because gut disruption will lead to cortisol imbalances, but cortisol imbalances will also lead to gut disruption. So we really have to address both. And how we do that is, again, by addressing the gut-brain connection, which will kind of self-regulate or buffer how the cortisol manages itself through the adrenal glands. But we also have to look at how are we responding to stress? Are we creating habits in our life that are making it difficult to manage our stress? Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we working through difficult challenges? Because all of us have difficult challenges, whether that be, excess in bills or medical treatments or etc., like a sick husband, a marriage that's falling apart. All of us have those significant stressors from time to time. And so, how are we actively supporting ourselves to come out of that fight or flight response that's going to allow the gut brain to connection to heal? Because a lot of times, what I see, especially with the women that I work with, is that we can give them all of the strategies, all of the protocols, the one, two, threes of here's what to eat, here's how to take care of yourself. But if they aren't willing to address the issues of, how they're emotionally and physically supporting their stress responses, they're only going to get a partial healing or a partial result there. And so we want to make sure that when we're talking about healing our hormones, we have to come out of that belief system that you need a hormone supplement to heal you. We need a holistic approach to heal you. And that requires looking at, the gut-brain connection, the HPA axis, and our cortisol pattern. So what I often see, I've talked a little bit about typically what we see for the women, who are menstruating, typically up to mid 40s. But then after that, in that perimenopausal range, what starts to happen is your ovaries start to produce less estrogen and less progesterone. And interestingly, the adrenal glands are now required to take over the production of some of those hormones to get you through menopause. And to keep enough progesterone and estrogen floating around so that you're not, miserable with hot flashes or anxiety or night sweats or mood swings or brain fog. Cortisol is a huge piece to that puzzle. And what I so often see when women come to me is they have gone to their provider, they've tried, progesterone creams or patches or pills, estrogen supplementation, hormone replacement therapy of some kind, and they may have been responsive for a month or two, but then after that, no responsiveness whatsoever. Their symptoms are back in full force, and 9 times out of 10, that is because nobody bothered to look at their gut symptoms and their cortisol pattern. So the very first thing that I do when I am working with somebody in perimenopause or menopause is get a baseline hormone lab panel, the Dutch hormone panel, which we can do through my office. And that Dutch hormone panel, it's a 21-page comprehensive report that really gives us a robust picture of what's going on in your adrenal glands. Do your adrenal glands have what they need to support you throughout the different stages of your reproduction, including going through, menopause or perimenopause? Because if that piece isn't addressed, like I said, we can address the estrogen or the progesterone, but often what that missing piece is the cortisol. And specifically, what I see, I see a lot of women coming to me with, the not sleeping very well at night, having afternoon fatigue, waking up, not feeling refreshed, and then not really feeling like they're waking up at all throughout the morning, which really is a very dysfunctional, or what I would call a flatlined cortisol pattern, because that's what it looks like on testing. And they will come to me saying, I think, my cortisol is just really high. And, because that's what they're told. That's what Google will say. It's, you have high cortisol, or your adrenal glands are just super dysfunctional, which they are. But typically what the issue is, especially for women in menopause, is that their cortisol is actually very low. They are underproducing. Or they're producing enough, but then they're metabolizing all of it instead of getting it into the cells where it needs to go to support the production of hormones. And so this is also one of the reasons why we are very successful in my practice with Abundant Wellness and Happy Hormones at really getting all of those symptoms situated and under control, is because we're also looking at that key component of cortisol, what it's doing throughout the day, how we can support it to make sure that it can actually sustain your hormones throughout all of the different reproductive stages. And that really does take a holistic approach, meaning that you can't just, go walking every day and expect that that will fix it, or eliminate your stressors and expect that that will fix it. We have to actually look at what's going on in the physiology during that menopausal or perimenopausal stage of life to make sure that your body is getting what it needs, because there are specific nutrients that your adrenal glands need, specifically B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, some adaptogenic herbs that can be very beneficial. But really, that comes down to what pattern we're seeing on the lab testing and how that's manifesting in your symptoms. Because we can have, 5 women with the same exact cortisol pattern, but for one woman it will look like hot flashes, and for the next it will look like insomnia. And so it is really important that you have a practitioner who not only knows how to read the test but also interpret it, and also look at it through a holistic lens of how are these numbers manifesting in the client's life. Because if you have somebody who's just prescribing based off of the lab test, it's no different than a physician prescribing it off of a standard serum lab test. It is not comprehensive, and it's not going to get you to where you want to go. So if you are looking for help and support through that perimenopausal, menopausal stage of life, then I would invite you to schedule a hormone breakthrough call with me, which I'm going to drop the link below. Or if you want to grab one of the slots that I have available for November and December to have the Dutch panel done with a consultation, I will drop the link in the show notes for you as well. That way we can get you starting to feel better, getting your energy back, getting your mood situated well before Christmas. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that this conversation on cortisol helped you, encouraged you, and gave you some information to have a better discussion with your provider about the next time.